There's a village in the north of a Japanese island where something strange is happening. The people there forget to die. That sounds like an exaggeration, so let me tell you what the numbers actually say. In a tiny town of around 3,000 people, there are more men and women over the age of 100 than almost anywhere else on the planet. Not old and fatting, old and still gardening, old and still dancing at birthday parties, old and still driving their friends to lunch. Two writers heard about this place and couldn't let it go. One of them was living in Japan. The other was in Barcelona. They'd read each other's work but had never actually met. Then one rainy night in a tiny Tokyo bar, they finally did, and later, walking through a quiet park, they started talking about something that had been quietly nagging at both of them for years. Everywhere they looked, people seemed to have everything and still felt empty. Good jobs, comfortable lives, and this hollow feeling, this sense of drifting through the days doing what they were told instead of what they loved. And then one word came up in their conversation, a Japanese word, Ikigai. They realized, standing there in that park, that nobody in the West had ever written a real book about it. So they did something most of us only daydream about. They packed cameras and recording equipment and traveled to that village of impossibly old people to ask them, face to face, what the rest of us keep getting wrong. And what they found there quietly rearranges everything you think you know about a long, happy life. So let's start with the word itself because it's the whole key. Ikigai. There's no perfect English translation, but the closest you can get is this: your reason for getting up in the morning. The thing that makes you want to be alive today. Some people describe it as the happiness of always being busy, though not busy the way we usually mean it. Not stressed and rushed and drowning in tasks. Busy the way a child is busy building something they love. The Japanese believe that everyone has an ikigai. Everyone. Whether you've found yours yet or not, it's in there waiting. And here, where it gets interesting, because the writers went in assuming the secret to living past 100 would be something you could put on a plate, some magic food, some miracle diet. It wasn't, or at least it wasn't only that. Because the first thing they noticed had nothing to do with eating at all. It was that in this village and really across Japan, people simply don't stop. There isn't even a proper word in Japanese for retirement the way we use it. That idea of leaving your work behind forever and settling into a chair. To these people, the concept barely makes sense. You don't quit the thing that gives your days meaning. You keep going. And there's an old proverb they live by that captures it perfectly. Only staying active will make you want to live 100 years. Sit with that for a second because it flips something we all assume. Most of us treat rest as the reward. We tell ourselves, one day I'll be free, one day I'll stop, and then I'll finally be happy. These centenarians are quietly telling us the opposite. The stopping is the danger. The purpose is the medicine. Now this village isn't a fluke. It turns out there are a handful of places scattered around the world where people live extraordinarily long lives, and researchers gave them a name. The Blue Zones. There's the island in Japan, of course, but also a region in Sardinia, Italy, a community in California, a peninsula in Costa Rica, an island in Greece. Totally different cultures, totally different foods, oceans apart. And yet when you study them side by side, the same four threads keep showing up in every single one. A simple, mostly plant-based diet, gentle daily movement, strong social ties, and a clear sense of purpose. Diet and movement, sure, we half expected those, but look at the other two: friendship, purpose. These aren't things you'd normally file under health advice, and yet the writers came to a conclusion that surprised even them. Community and purpose might matter as much as what you eat, maybe more. Let me show you what that community actually looks like, because it's something we've almost completely lost. In this village, people belong to what they call a moe. Picture a small group of friends who commit to each other, not for a season, not until life gets busy, but for life. They look out for one another, emotionally, practically, even financially. If one of them falls on hard times, the others are there. It's not a club you drop when you're tired. It's closer to a second family you choose. And these bonds run so deep that there's a saying on the island: treat everyone like a brother, even if you've never met them before. Now imagine growing old inside that. Imagine knowing with total certainty that you will never be alone and never be forgotten. Compare that to how a lot of us age now, in quiet apartments, checking a phone that doesn't ring. Suddenly those long lives make a lot more sense, don't they? But there's a shadow side to all this, and the writers dug into it too. Because if purpose and connection help us live longer, then it stands to reason that certain things quietly drag us in the other direction. Things we do every single day without noticing. And the biggest culprit might surprise you. It's stress, not the dramatic kind, the constant low-level hum of it. Hear what the science shows. In one study, doctors took a young, healthy man and put him under pressure. A job interview, half an hour of hard math problems, nothing life-threatening. And when they looked at his body's response, they found something unsettling. His immune system reacted to the stress the same way it reacts to an actual infection. His antibodies started attacking healthy cells, aging them before their time. In another study, researchers looked at mothers caring for chronically ill children, women living under enormous ongoing stress, and found that the stress was physically wearing down the tiny caps on the ends of their cells that protect against aging. The more stress, the faster the wear. Think about what that means for how most of us live now. There's this way of picturing it that stuck with me. Imagine our ancient ancestors, the cave dwellers. Most of the time they were relaxed, genuinely calm. Stress hit them only in rare, real moments: a predator, a storm, a threat you could see. And then it passed and their bodies returned to peace. That was the design. Now look at us. We wake up and immediately our phone lights up. A ping, a notification, a message. All day long, 1,000 tiny false alarms, each one releasing a little dose of that stress chemical into our blood. Our bodies think we're being hunted. All day long. And here's the twist the book is careful to make, because it would be easy to get this wrong. Not all stress is bad. A little bit of it is actually good for you. People who face real challenges, who put their heart into difficult work, tend to live longer than people who chase a totally relaxed, empty life. In fact, one long study found that folks who took the easy road and retired early into comfort often didn't fare as well as those who stayed engaged and challenged. So the enemy isn't effort. The enemy is that constant, meaningless background anxiety that never switches off. There's one more silent thief worth naming, and you're probably doing it right now. Sitting. The research on this is genuinely alarming. Your metabolism slows dramatically after just 30 minutes in a chair. Sit for 2 hours and your good cholesterol starts dropping. Some researchers have started calling sitting the new smoking. But here's the hopeful part, and it's almost absurdly simple. Just standing up and moving for 5 minutes gets everything flowing again. You don't need a gym. You don't need to run marathons. You just can't stay still. So that's what shortens the journey. Now let's talk about what gives it meaning, because this is where the story gets deeper. Long before anyone was interviewing villagers in Japan, there was a man who discovered the power of purpose in the darkest place imaginable. His name was Viktor Frankl, and he was a prisoner in a concentration camp. Around him, people were dying, not only from starvation and cruelty, but sometimes it seemed from something harder to see, from losing the will to go on. And Frankl noticed something he never forgot. The prisoners who had the best chance of surviving weren't the strongest or the youngest. They were the ones who had something waiting for them on the other side, something to finish, someone to return to, a reason. Frankl himself had been working on a manuscript, his life's work, and when he arrived at the camp, it was taken from him and destroyed. And that loss, strangely, became his lifeline. The burning need to rewrite it, to bring those ideas back into the world, gave him a reason to keep breathing through the horror. He even scribbled notes on scraps of paper while sick with a raging fever. He survived. And afterward, he built an entire school of psychology around one brutal, beautiful truth, an idea he borrowed from Nietzsche. He who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. Read that again. He who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. That single sentence is the beating heart of this entire idea. Purpose doesn't just make good days better. It makes unbearable days survivable. Frankl spent his life helping people find their why, and some of his stories are impossible to forget. A doctor once came to him, crushed by grief. His wife had died and he couldn't climb out of the darkness. Frankl didn't offer comfort. He asked a single question. What would have happened, he said, if you had died first and she had been the one left behind? The doctor thought about it and said his wife would have suffered terribly. She would have been devastated. And Frankl replied gently, "You have spared her that suffering. The price is that you must survive and mourn her instead." Nothing about the facts changed. The wife was still gone, but the man's pain suddenly had a purpose. His suffering meant he was protecting the person he loved from feeling it, and he walked out at peace. That's the whole thing. Meaning doesn't erase pain. It gives pain a shape you can carry. There's a gentler version of this idea that comes from a Japanese therapist named Shoma Morita, and it's almost the opposite of how we usually try to fix ourselves. We tend to think we have to feel better before we can act. Get rid of the fear, then do the thing. Morita said no. He taught his patients to accept their feelings instead of fighting them. Let the fear be there like weather passing overhead. And then, regardless of how you feel, do what you should be doing. Because action comes first, and the feelings quietly reshape themselves to follow. He had a little fable for people who couldn't stop wrestling with their own anxious thoughts. Picture a donkey tied to a post with a rope. The donkey hates being tied, so it walks around and around the post trying to get free. But every circle just wraps the rope tighter until the animal is pressed right up against the very post it was trying to escape. That, Morita said, is what we do with our fears. The more we struggle against them, the more trapped we become. Stop circling. Accept the rope is there. And go live anyway. So we have purpose, and we have acceptance. But there's a daily, practical engine that turns all of this into a life you can actually feel. And you've experienced it, even if you've never had a name for it. Have you ever been so absorbed in something that you looked up and hours had vanished? You forgot to eat. You forgot your phone existed. You even, in a strange way, forgot yourself. Psychologists call that flow. It's the state where you're so completely involved in what you're doing that nothing else seems to matter. Time bends. The nagging little voice in your head goes quiet. And here, the finding that should make all of us pay attention. The happiest people aren't the ones who achieve the most or own the most. They're the ones who spend the most time in flow, which means happiness isn't some prize waiting at the finish line. It's woven into the doing itself. There's a phrase the book keeps returning to: rituals over goals. The joy is in the process, not the result. So how do you get there more often? There are really 3 keys, and they're worth remembering. The first is to pick something that's challenging but not too challenging. Think of it like a dial. If a task is too easy, you get bored and drift. If it's too hard, you get anxious and give up. But right in the middle, where the thing stretches you just slightly past what's comfortable, that's where flow lives. So whatever you're doing, add a little something extra. A slightly bigger challenge than yesterday. The second key is to have a clear objective, but then let go of it. There's a lovely way of putting this: compass over maps. In a world that keeps changing, a detailed map can lead you straight into the woods because the terrain has shifted. But a compass always points you in the right direction. So know where you're headed, then stop obsessing over the destination and pour yourself into the step in front of you. And the third key is the one almost everyone gets wrong. Do one thing at a time. We've been sold this fantasy that multitasking makes us efficient, but the research is merciless. Juggling tasks can slash your productivity by around 60%. It temporarily drops your effective intelligence. It wrecks your memory and your creativity. In one experiment, people who were chronic multitaskers literally couldn't ignore irrelevant distractions anymore. They trained their own brains to chase every shiny thing. Flow needs the opposite. It needs one thing fully. Now, when you watch true masters do this, it becomes almost hypnotic. The writers once visited a factory that makes fine makeup brushes. At first, they couldn't figure out where the actual craft happened, until someone led them to a small room flooded with light. And there sat a woman, wearing a mask, sorting individual bristles one at a time. Single bristles, with such total concentration and such quiet speed that she didn't even notice strangers had walked in and were watching her. Every bristle of every brush the company made pass through her hands. She was, it turned out, one of the most important people in the entire operation. That's flow made visible. Even Steve Jobs, a man who could have anything, got pulled into this. On his trips to Japan, he became fascinated not by flashy technology but by a porcelain artisan working in a rare, old style. Jobs bought his cups and vases, came back 3 times in a single week, and eventually sought the man out just to ask him questions. He asked for teacups in a new style, and the craftsman made 150 of them, then chose the 12 most perfect ones to send. That's what mastery pulls out of people: reverence. And maybe the purest example is a sushi chef who has made sushi nearly every day for over 80 years. His apprentices spend years just learning to make the egg omelet correctly, practicing it over and over until the master finally nods. His little restaurant earned the highest honors in the world, and he was offered every reason to expand, to franchise, to cash in. He never did, because for him it was never about the money. It was about the flow. About doing the one thing he loved perfectly, one more time. There's a filmmaker in Japan, a beloved animator who draws nearly everything by hand and works even on Sundays and holidays. He once announced his retirement, and the very next day he was back at his desk, drawing again. Which raises a question the book asks so simply it stops you cold. Can a person really retire from something they're truly passionate about? That's the thing about a genuine Ikigai. You couldn't put it down if you tried. So the writers took all of this, the science, the psychology, the flow, and they carried it back to that village of ancient, laughing people to see how it actually looked in real life. And what they found wasn't a monastery of serious, disciplined elders. It was joy. Time seemed to move differently there. Everyone was busy, always coming and going, always with some task, and yet nobody was ever in a hurry. They pursued their purpose constantly, but gently, without strain. One woman, 88 years old and still proudly driving her own car, took the writers to lunch with her 99-year-old friend riding shotgun. And over the meal she said something that cuts right through all the science and diet charts. Food, she told them, won't help you live longer. The secret is smiling and having a good time. They went to a birthday party at the community center for people turning 99, 94, and 89, and these elders danced like 20-somethings. They played a gentle lawn game with the locals and got soundly beaten by a woman who had just turned 104, while everyone laughed at their defeated faces. When the writers sat down and interviewed 100 of the oldest residents, asking each of them the secret, the answers kept circling back to the same handful of simple truths. Don't worry. Over and over they said the secret to a long life is not to worry and to keep your heart young. Open up to people. Greet them with a smile. Cultivate good habits. Almost every single one of them kept a vegetable garden. They rose early. They kept their hands busy, and they had a lovely saying about it, from your fingers to your brain and back again. Keep the fingers moving, they promised, and 100 years will come to you. Nurture your friendships every single day. One elder said it plainly. Getting together with my friends is my most important reason for being. Talking each day with the people you love, that's the secret. Live unhurried. Slow down, relax. You live much longer, they insisted, if you're not in a rush. And be optimistic. Laugh. One of them said simply, laughter is the most important thing. The trick, another said, is just to live. That's it. That's the wisdom of the longest living people on earth. Not a supplement, not a hack. Just a garden, some friends, a slow pace, and a reason to get up in the morning. Now they do eat well, and it's worth knowing how because their approach is refreshingly sane. They eat an astonishing variety of food, Around 18 different items in a single day, mostly vegetables, tofu, sweet potatoes, and grains, with fish a few times a week and very little meat, sugar, or salt. They serve it on many small plates, which naturally makes you eat less. And they follow one beautiful rule that you could adopt starting with your very next meal. It's called hara hachebu. Eat until you're 80% full, not stuffed, not uncomfortable. Just stop when the hunger fades while there's still a little room. It's an ancient practice and modern science backs it up because eating a little less appears to genuinely slow the aging process at the cellular level. Small plates, a bit of everything, and stop before you're full. That's the whole diet. As for exercise, here's the part that lets you breathe a sigh of relief. These people don't go to the gym. They don't run marathons or lift weights. The secret the book lands on is almost too simple. The people who live longest aren't the ones who exercise the most. They're the ones who move the most. Constant, gentle motion all day long. Walking, gardening, a short group stretching routine in the morning that takes all of 5 or 10 minutes. Water, they'd say, is at its best when it flows fresh and doesn't sit still. Your body is the same. But life, as we all know, isn't only gardens and laughter. Hard things come. People we love disappear. Plans collapse. And a purpose is only as strong as its ability to survive the storm. So the final piece of this is about how to protect your reason for living when life tries to take it from you. The Japanese have a proverb for it. Fall 7 times, rise 8. That's more than just stubbornness. Real resilience is a way of seeing the world. It's staying focused on what actually matters instead of getting swept away by every wave of fear and frustration. And 2 ancient traditions, one from the East and one from the West, arrived at almost the same conclusion about how to do it. The Stoics of ancient Greece and Rome had a startling practice. Every so often, they would deliberately imagine losing everything. One of the wealthiest men in Rome would periodically live as if he were poor, sleeping rough, eating plain food, asking himself, "Is this the thing I was so afraid of?" And by rehearsing the worst, 2 things happened. He stopped fearing it because he'd already been there in his mind. And he came back to his ordinary life flooded with gratitude for everything he still had. There's a line from that tradition that says it all. It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. And they had a laser focus on a single distinction. Some things are within your control, and some things aren't. Waste no energy on the second kind. Pour everything into the first. Nearly every religion and philosophy that has ever brought people peace circles back to that one idea. Woven through all of this is a very Japanese way of making peace with the fact that nothing lasts. There's a concept called wabi-sabi, which is finding beauty precisely in things that are imperfect and impermanent. A cracked teacup, a weathered piece of wood, because only imperfect, fleeting things truly resemble nature. There's a famous shrine in Japan that they tear down and rebuild completely every 20 years, not because the building is falling apart, but to honor the truth that everything passes and that there's beauty in the passing. And there's a companion idea, 4 little words that can change how you experience an ordinary Tuesday. This moment exists only now and won't come again. Every meeting, every meal, every conversation is happening for the first and last time, exactly as it is. Once you really feel that, you stop rushing through your life waiting for the good part. You realize the good part is the part you're in. There's even a way to go beyond just surviving hardship. A thinker named Nassim Taleb pointed out that some things don't merely withstand shocks, they actually get stronger from them. He called this being antifragile, and he used the image of the mythical Hydra, the monster where you cut off one head and 2 grow back in its place. Every wound made it more powerful. You can build a life like that. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't depend on a single source of income, a single friend, a single anything, because that makes you fragile, one bad break away from ruin. Interestingly, every one of those elders in the village had a second occupation, usually that little garden whose vegetables they'd sell. Take small, sensible risks that can't wipe you out but might pay off big. and deliberately cut away the things that weaken you, the toxic people, the habits you know are harmful, the obligations that drain you and give nothing back. Because every setback approached the right way becomes fuel. Fall 7 times, rise 8. So where does all of this leave us? The book ends with the story of a calligrapher who spent his entire life devoted to one small, specific purpose, capturing human emotion in short poems painted with a brush. And one of his lines lingers long after you've closed the book. Happiness is always determined by your heart. Not by your salary, not by your achievements, by your heart and where you choose to point it each day. And maybe the most freeing thing in this whole story is what the elders taught the writers almost by accident. Don't agonize over finding your grand, perfect purpose. Don't turn the search for meaning into just one more source of anxiety, because your reason for being doesn't have to be enormous. It can live in the smallest things: being a good parent, helping a neighbor, tending a garden, meeting your friends for lunch. Life, the authors gently remind us, is not a problem to be solved. It's something to be lived, busy with what you love, surrounded by people who love you. If you follow the thread all the way through, everything ties into a few simple rules that the whole village lives by. Stay active and never truly retire. Take it slow. Don't fill your stomach. Surround yourself with good friends. Keep your body moving. Smile. Reconnect with nature. Give thanks. Live in this moment. And follow your Ikigai, whatever it turns out to be, because there is a passion and a talent inside you, and if you haven't found it yet, then finding it is your mission. That's the extraordinary thing about that little village of 100-year-olds. They didn't unlock some secret hidden from the rest of us. They just never let go of the things we're always promising ourselves we'll get around to. Their friends, their purpose, their slowness, their joy. If any of this stirred something in you, I genuinely encourage you to read the full book, Ikigai by Héctor García and Francesc Miralles. We've only walked through the doorway here. Inside, there's so much more of the villagers' voices, the diets, the gentle exercises, the deeper philosophy, all of it laid out with a warmth that's hard to capture in one telling. It's a short read, and it might be one of the quietest, most valuable few hours you spend this year. You'll find it linked below. But before you go anywhere, try one small thing. Tomorrow morning, before the pings and the notifications and the rush pull you back into that ancient state of being hunted, pause for just a moment and ask yourself a single question. What is the thing that makes me want to get up today? If you know the answer, go do more of it. And if you don't know yet, don't worry. That's not a flaw. That's just the beginning of the most important search of your life. Take it slow, walk slowly, and you'll go far.